All right. Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I want to thank everybody for joining today. My name is Jennifer Morris. I'm the Director of Product Evangelism here at MadCap Software. And you've heard the news. We've had a fun release last week to MadCap Flare and MadCap Central. So today's webinar is going to cover the nuts and bolts of this new release. So before we jump in, I just want to cover two quick items of business that we always like to do. So first, friendly reminder, this webinar will be recorded. And so if you have to leave early, that's fine. We're going to send a link to everybody that registered once this recording is done. We would also encourage anybody to ask questions, and there's a questions or a chat area in that GoToWebinar console that you're using to view this presentation. So if you have any questions as we're presenting, feel free to use them. Feel free to use that section there. We're going to do our best to get to those, all of them at the end, but whatever we don't have a chance to get to, we're going to be following up with a question and answer document to everybody. And so you'll get a list of all of the questions and the answers that were presented during the webinar today. We have so much to cover, so I'm not sure we'll get to every single question, but please keep asking them, and we'll do our best to follow up quickly to everybody with all of the questions and answers after the webinar. So my agenda today, first of all, we're going to talk about what's new in Flare. We've had a lot of updates to this to the software. We're going to talk about what's new in Central and also some additional features. I am so excited today to also introduce, I almost forgot, I wanted to also introduce my colleague, my teammate who's joining me today, Giorgio Catolico. He's on the line. So the two of us are going to be presenting today, which is a lot of fun. I'm so happy to be doing this with him. So what we're going to do is, because the two of us are presenting and we're in two different spaces, we're going to be tossing the presenter rights between the two of us. So we'll do it as elegantly as we can, so bear with us as we switch screens a couple times throughout the presentation. So again, this is our agenda today. We're going to talk all about the nuts and bolts of the major new features in Flare and Central. And so with that, since we've got so much to cover, I'm really excited to turn it over to Gio, who's going to start. Go ahead and do that. All right.
All right. So the first feature that I would like to introduce for Flare 2019 R2 is responsive content personalization. Well, we know right now that using conditions, we can pick and choose which content we would like to display per target. But now using conditions, we can choose which content we would like to display based on the media query and size of the screen. This gives us more control over content when the screen changes and can actually make some content easier to read on different devices. With responsive content, we took a major step forward in creating content personalization based on user type, device, or environment. Nobody else in the industry does content personalization as easy as we made it. So I would like to just start this off by showing what this behavior looks like in the end result. I'll go ahead and pull over one of my online outputs, which is my galactic knowledge base, and this is going to be Star Wars themed for all those Star Wars fans out there. But I have my online help currently in the default web size. Now, as we know, all of Flare's HTML5 outputs are responsive and automatically adjust. But this new edition features changing the actual content within our topics and not just changing the skin or moving content around to fit the size of the screen. So I'd like you guys to pay attention to the icons that we have here while we are in the web screen size. Now, when we resize the screen, you'll see that the icons will change to something that's more appropriate to the size of the screen or the device that we're using. So as I shrink this down to our tablet medium, you'll see that the icons will change from that click icon to now a swipe icon. And if I shrink this down even more, the icons will change once more to now a tap icon for our mobile mediums. And we could also make text responsive as well, as it no longer says click, it says tap on the options to learn more. And if I resize this to our tablet medium, it says swipe on the options to learn more. So let's go into Flare to show you guys how to set this up. So we'll first start off by creating our conditions. Now, I have already created my conditions to save us a little bit of time, but we'll call our conditions mobile, tablet, and web. Now, we can, of course, name these conditions anything that we want, as they are arbitrary values just like normal conditions. And also, as a best practice, it is beneficial to create these conditions in a separate tag set, separate from your other conditions. This is mainly for organizational purposes, and I'll show you why this is going to help us out and simplify things once we head into the target. But now that we've created our conditions, the next step is that we're going to go ahead and tag our content. So I'll open up one of my topics, my Millennium Falcon Blueprint topic. And this topic, it just contains a very detailed image with a lot of small text. Now, this image, this may be suitable when we're viewing this topic on our laptops or computer screens. But when this is going to be viewed on our tablet or mobile phones, this is going to be entirely too small to read for those kind of users. So what we're going to do here is that we're going to go ahead and personalize our content for our mobile and tablet users by adding another image that has much larger text. So I'll go ahead and grab my image and insert it. And as you can see, this one has much larger text. It's easier to read. So now that we have two conditions in our topic, we won't actually be seeing two separate images in our output. Because what we're going to do here is we're going to condition our content to only appear once we're in a certain device or once our output is in a certain media query. So I'll go ahead and tag my image on top to only appear once we're in the web medium. And I'll tag my image below with the much larger text to only appear once we're in the tablet or mobile medium. So now I've tagged my content. Now the next step is we're going to go ahead and head into our target and set up the conditions there. So I'll open up my HTML5 target. And you'll see that we did change the condition tab a little bit to make setting up these conditions and controlling the behavior much easier. And we'll come back to this later. But we did remove the include and exclude checkmarks that we're familiar with, and we did replace it with an action box that allows us to select the action in the column to the right. Now, by default, all of the actions here will be set to not set for our conditions. Now, to use responsive content conditions, we'll first select our condition, and then in the action column, we'll select display by media query, and then we'll select the condition that we wanted to use. So we'll set mobile to mobile. Then for tablet, we'll go ahead and set this one to tablet. And we'll set web to web. Now, this is where making our conditions in a separate tag set. This is where this comes in handy when we're setting this up. Now, we don't have to set this up in a separate tag set, but when we separate this out, it doesn't get mixed up with the rest of our conditions. And now this is a lot easier to see because we only have 5 conditions, but let's say we had 30 conditions. It's not easy to see which ones are specifically for our responsive conditions. And also by changing and moving to the action column instead of the include and exclude check marks. This essentially makes what action will happen to the condition much more clear. With the previous version, if a condition was not selected to be included or excluded, it wasn't very clear as to what might happen to that condition, whether it's going to be included or excluded in our output. There's actually been a common belief going around that if I leave a condition unchecked, then it will be automatically included in our output. Well, this actually hasn't been the case because the behavior of the condition is actually determined by the action of the conditions that are set. And this has always been a rule, even in previous versions, and the way that conditions have always worked. So the way that conditions actually work is that if my conditions are unchecked, and if I set a single condition to include, then the rest of the conditions that aren't checked yet will then be excluded from our output. And it lets you know here in the parentheses what's going to happen to that condition. Whereas if I set a single condition to exclude, then the rest of the conditions that have not been set yet will be included in our output. So this was a lot harder to visualize in previous versions of Flare. But in this version, Flare 2019 R2, we can explicitly see the action right there, so there's no more guesswork. We could also multi-select conditions as well to make setting this up go a lot more quicker. But now that we've set up our conditions, I'll go ahead and build my target. And while my target is building, I would also like to point out that with our responsive conditions, we could also see this behavior within the preview of our topic. And you could also see this within the XML editor as well. And these options are available for us. That way, we don't necessarily have to build all of our content and all of the files within our project to see what this behavior looks like. But I'll go ahead and open my output now that it's done building. Let me pull this over. And I'll stretch this out to the web medium. Let me go ahead and click on that topic that we are working on. So as expected, we're looking at the image that has the small text because we're going to be viewing this on a larger screen, such as our laptop. But when we shrink this down to our mobile and tablet mediums, you'll see that the icon will change to the image that has the much larger text. That way on those smaller devices, we can now read our content. So that's responsive content personalization. Now the next feature that I would like to introduce is an easy way to bring our files into our Flare project, as we can now drag and drop content straight into our project from within Flare. So this is going to be beneficial when we're copying in our resource files like our graphics, our images, our Word files, and even our PDFs. We don't have to go into the Windows Explorer to drop in these types of files anymore and involve more clicks and have more windows open than we have to. We made this more intuitive and logical by being able to stay within Flare. So I'll go back into Flare. And let's say I have these 4 images and I wanted to bring them into my Content Explorer. So I could quickly do this by highlighting all of my images, and then I could drag and drop all of them into whichever folder I designate to drop them into. So I'll drop them into my new images folder. And in a second, they will be available, and now we could insert any of these images into our content. We could also drop in other resource files like a PDF, something that we wouldn't typically be able to drop in within Flare. I'll drop that into my Content Explorer, and now it appears. Now, if we accidentally drop files into the Content Explorer that shouldn't be in there, like a skin file, for example, it should go into the project organizer. But if I drag that into the Content Explorer, Flare will actually detect that for us. It won't actually let us drop it in there. But if we do drop this file into the project organizer where it should go, you'll see that Flare does sort it out for us once we copy it in. And it'll drop it into the folder that it's supposed to go into. That way we know exactly where to look when we want to use it. Now, if we do happen to drop files that we could import, like a Word document, for example, this will prompt Flare to ask if we would like to copy the files into the project, or if we would like to import that in with the new import wizard, which segues us into the next feature that I would like to talk about, which are some of the Word import improvements that were made. So with this new Word import, migrating content has never been easier with the redesigned Word import structure and drag and drop import. We streamlined the workflow and made the import process and options much easier to understand for our users, resulting in a much quicker import. So we could still import our Word documents in the same way as previous versions, or we can bypass all of that, instead of having to go into the project ribbon, selecting import and select MS Word documents, or going into file, selecting new project and selecting MS Word documents. We can now bypass all of that by simply dragging and dropping our Word document into our project. So I'll drop this into the Word import folder. And the wizard will populate with the files that we just dropped in. Now, this is going to be the Word document that I'm bringing into Flare. It's just a sample Word document. It's only a couple pages. However, it includes elements that you would see in a typical Word document. We have multiple headings, we have an image, we have a table. So let's go ahead and bring this into Flare. I'll close this out. And as mentioned earlier, the Word import will automatically populate with all of the files that we just dropped in, and it will also specify the folder that we dropped them into as well. Now, as some of you may be able to tell, uh, some of the structure has changed. In previous versions, we used next and back buttons at the bottom to move through the pages, but now the wizard just has one required page, which is this general page, and two that are optional, which are the styles and the advanced options. Now, from the general page, the one that we're on, depending on how our document is formatted, and if we would like to use all of those default import settings and break our Word document on every H1 detected, we could actually hit finish right now after dropping in those Word documents, making this one of the fastest Word imports with just a couple of steps. If you know how to do a drag and drop, you now know how to do a Word document within Flare in this new version. But let's go ahead and see what's new in some of the optional tabs that we have here. So I'll go into the Styles page. Now, we can't go over every option during this webinar, but we'll just cover which ones are the new ones. Now, from the Styles page, we combine multiple pages from the old wizard into one, which essentially allows us to move through the import quicker and do much more in one single screen. So we could select an existing style sheet to associate with, bring in those styles. Now, after doing this, the styles from the style sheet will become available when we map our word styles here in the dropdown. Now, here in this dropdown, it also lets you know which ones are the Flare styles and which ones are the word styles that we could choose from. Using the default names that we have here, we can choose to retain those word style names when we're mapping, or we can get rid of those and opt to use the base heading names by selecting discard MS word styles. This essentially replaced the do not preserve word styles and the preserved word styles that we're familiar with in the previous version. And also for those styles that we would like to break those long linear Word documents on, we can quickly check which styles we would like to start a new topic here in this column on the right. So if I would like to break it on my heading 2s, I just have to select or deselect that option. Now, under the advanced options, some of the new features include the ability to create a new style sheet. In previous versions, a new style sheet was always created upon importing, which in the past, this can get a little tedious, especially if we're doing a lot of imports and we have to manage or delete every style sheet that was added if we don't want to use it. So when this option is disabled, the styles resulting from the import will actually be added to the end of the project's master style sheet. So I'll go ahead and leave this unchecked and show what that looks like once we're done with the import. And also we could manage how our tables now import. So we could retain the look of our tables and make them the same, make them look the same as they were in our source Word document. And we could bring in these styles into our project as a regular Flare style sheet. We could bring them in as a Flare table style sheet. If we have any existing table style sheets and we would like to use some of those styles and apply them to our tables that we're going to import, we can select that option. Or we could just remove all of those table styles so we can apply them later after we're done importing. We now have a new list option here, use standard list style type. Now having this list option checked will allow us to convert those word lists into standard bullets or numbers when they're being brought into Flare. But when we're keeping this disabled, the lists that are imported will actually import with the symbols used in those Word documents so that we can keep those special elements for custom lists or for auto numbers. Now, however, when these are being imported into Flare, you'll see that these are contained within span tags when they're imported. In previous versions, if there was a page break found in our Word document, we automatically created a new topic on that page break. But there was a little bit of a problem with this, since sometimes a page break won't be followed by heading, and instead will be followed by things like normal paragraph text, or might be followed by a table or an image. So we have more control over them now by allowing us to decide whether we would like to create a new topic on those page breaks like in the previous versions, or we could convert them now into MadCap page breaks when they import into Flare, or we could simply ignore them. Now that we're done with these options, we can go ahead and select Finish. We'll go ahead and accept our files. And now if I open up my Word import folder, you'll see that our files have now been imported. And imported with all the elements that we have here, retained everything, especially with the formatting. All of our headings and images are being kept here. And also, because we chose to not create a new style sheet, we chose to add all of those existing, or we chose to import all of those styles that were in our Word document into our existing style sheet that we have in our project. If I scroll down into our style sheet, you'll see that these styles are appended to the bottom here, and it lets you know where those styles start with this comment here that specifies where our source Word document came from. Now, additionally, for those that are outputting to Word, we also added the ability to now output straight into docx format. So I'll open up my Word document. In previous versions, originally we had to add a little extension docx in the target, but we now have this option available for us here. So that covers what's new in Flare. That's some of the features. Now I'd like to go ahead and pass the presenter rights back over to Jen, so she could go ahead and show what else are some of the new features.
Great, thanks, Gio, and I'll wait for that to come back over to me here.
All right, there you go.
Perfect. All right, okay, so I want to transition a little bit. We were focusing a bit on Flare there, but I want to transition and talk about some of the features that we've just released that are sort of shared features between Flare 2019 R2 and also the MadCap Central October 2019 release. And the first one I want to talk about, which I'm really excited about, is output analytics. So output analytics in Central provides measurable and actionable insights on our published HTML5 outputs. And again, I said I'm excited about it, and you'll hear me say it over and over again. I think one of the things I really love about this is that it's so easy to set up, and you can start gathering data on your HTML5 outputs right away. So before I show you the mechanics, just a really quick overview for those of you who may not be very familiar with Central, or maybe you haven't put your hands on it or tinkered with it yet. So I'm talking about this platform here, and what MadCap Central is. It's our cloud-based platform that we developed that helps you plan and track, manage various processes, your Flare content, and the teams that are responsible for producing documentation. And when I say teams, I'm not just talking about you, the Flare authors, but also those other folks on your team that would never use Flare. Subject matter experts, other engineers, people that are going to help you author and collaborate and edit your source content. So it's really the team as a whole. And we built Central to solve various problems that folks have been telling us about over the years that we know Flare can't solve on its own as a desktop tool. So if we were to kind of break it down into its main feature buckets, Central offers a really easy to use version control solution that all writers can use. So if you don't have IT resources readily available to get a source control platform set up, or maybe you don't want you don't want to use the existing source control tool you have and you want to switch to something else. And again, you may not have IT readily available to do that. Not everybody does. It can feel daunting. And this is an area where Central can help. With 2 clicks of a button, you've got instant source control. And as authors, you can easily collaborate. Task management's an area that's been tricky. When we built Central, we wanted to observe how do teams of writers keep track of all the stuff they have to do to get content out the door. And we saw a wide range of things. Manually kept Excel spreadsheets. We saw teams that had whiteboards with notes all over it. We saw some people with sticky notes on their walls. We saw some team members who didn't share anything with anybody. So it really ran the spectrum. Central offers a really easy to use task board that all of the Flare authors can use, and detailed project level checklists to create these automatic milestones, and you can track your progress as you continue to develop. The review workflow. So it's, for some time, getting subject matter experts involved is an area that was tricky for folks. Now, we offered a tool called MadCap Contributor. We still offer it, still available, but we often heard it was challenging to get subject matter experts to install and use another piece of software. And so even though Contributor was meant to be this scaled down version of Flare, kind of a simple processor, it was still different. I mean, subject matter experts, from what I've observed, can come in lots of different skill sets. You may have some that are very technical. You may have some that, if you sent them a Word doc, they may not know where to turn on track changes in Word and start editing. So everybody's a little bit different. So we've done away now with the need to install any kind of desktop tool with Central. This new review workflow with Central means your subject matter experts can review your source content in a web browser. So you can ask them to review your files. And they can edit that content using a very simple, lightweight editor that runs in a web browser. And it's simple on purpose. It's not meant to look like Flare. It's not meant to feel like Flare. It's meant to get those edits and those collaboration, the collaborative moments quickly from your subject matter experts. So we keep the power of Flare as a desktop tool for the content authors, those that own the single source of truth. And now we pair it with this easy-to-use browser-based editor for reviews. Couple other things here, build management and content hosting. So, in Flare, it's quite easy to build our outputs, right? We click a button that says build and we get this beautiful output file. But then what? We have to get our content out there and available to our customers to see. And so with Central, if Central can see our Flare projects, it makes it really easy to schedule builds to happen programmatically. We don't have to buy an additional build license. We don't have to configure an additional build server. We can have Central build our targets when we want. And then optionally, if we can use Central to privately stage those builds as authors, we can log in and see them. But then optionally, if we like what we see, if we have the right permission in Central, we can turn that content to live, and we can make that a live URL that our customers can use to search and host it, or to search and find information. And that URL can be branded so that it doesn't necessarily have to be the vanity URL that Central provides, but it's really easy. But we can also brand that URL so that it looks like maybe it's coming from our site, docs.mycompany.com, for example. So you have some options there. You can still host, you can still use Central and host your outputs wherever you want, but it's just really easy to do in Central. It's literally a click of a button, and you don't have to provision anything from IT. You're self-reliant to do that yourself. So another option there. Now, a new feature we added a couple months ago that I covered was translation management. So if you are translating your source content into different languages, again, if Central can see our projects, if we've cloned our projects in Central, there's a translation tab there so that we can tell Central to get an analysis and a quote from our Mad Translations team. You select your targets that you want to have analyzed and you want to have a quote. And within about a day or so, that content's going to be analyzed and you'll have a quote to understand the turnaround time and how much it's going to cost. It's not a binding quote, but it's a really quick way to understand what the process is going to be. And it's been vetted by our own translation team. And the last thing, which is what we're here to talk about today, is output analytics. And so this is really important. When you provide searchable and findable content to your readers, they can find the answers they need wherever they need it and on whatever device they're using. What you're doing, you're really helping reduce the number, of calls that are coming into your support team when you can ensure your readers are finding what they need. The cost of self-service is so much less than the cost of your human support team. Not that you don't want to talk to your customers, but your customers will be happier when they can help themselves. It frees up your support team as well to help with those more, tricky issues that need a little bit more time. And as we can see, we can use these analytics for other things too, like understanding, how do we start building out micro content to improve search? How do we make some decisions about the browsers that we support in our application going forward, or the operating systems that we support going forward? And if you have a MadCap Central account, that's all you need. You don't have to, for this particular feature, for output analytics, we don't even have to bind our project to Central for this to work. We don't even have to host our content in Central for this to work. We can host our output anywhere. As I said, all you need is that Central account. So it's very flexible and very easy. So I'm going to put PowerPoint away for a moment. I'm going to switch over to Flare, and we're going to take a look at the mechanics of getting this set up. All right, so let me just check my view here to make sure you're seeing what I'm seeing. Good. All right, so I'm in that Star Wars project that Gio was just working on. And what I've done is I've gone into my targets folder here and I've opened up my HTML5 target. So output analytics in Central works with HTML5 targets. It's not going to work for PDF or Word. It has to be one of those HTML5 targets, first of all. In 2019 R2, when you open your targets file, you're going to see a new tab down here called Analytics. So I've got that selected. And what I've done, I just saved a minute or so, it doesn't take long. I went ahead and I chose my provider here. So we've got when you first come here, it'll say no provider selected. But I went ahead and I chose Central because I have a Central test account. We still have the old Pulse option there if you're still on that. But again, Central now offers this, so it's going to be much simpler to implement. So I chose Central because I have an account. I went ahead and logged in already. If you have not logged in, you'll be prompted to. This will say log in and not log out. Once you log in, you'll be able to choose your Central license here. And then all we have to do is click create. So what I'm going to do is create a key. Now this can be descriptive because we're going to see this when we pop over to Central. Maybe I'll call this Star Wars KB, and I can enter a description. This is for our internal Star Wars tech support team. Something like that. You can put in whatever you want as a descriptive element, or you don't have to. But we do want to give this key a name. I'm going to click OK, and that's all I have to do. I'll go ahead and save. Now we're going to build this real quick, but I just want to show you. So we've got this key created now. I'm going to pop over to Central real quick. Actually, I'm going to build. Before I go to Central, I'll do that in a minute. I'm going to go ahead and build. I want this target to now have that key in there. So I'll go ahead and build. And we'll let it do its thing. In fact, while that's working, I'm going to go back over to Central, or we'll go over here to Central real quick. Now, if you've logged into Central recently, you may see this new Analytics tab. And so that's what we're going to use to start tracking data on our targets. So if I refresh this here, now there's that key. Okay, so it's there. Just by creating that key and saving, we've established that connection with Central. Okay, now we don't have any data yet. I've just gone ahead and built my target. So let me go back to Flare. So we're done. Now I just clicked build. We're going to use this. I'm going to just use what's local to my machine here. You could have published this anywhere. So for those of you who do publishing, right, publish is like a twofer in Flare. It builds and then it copies it to your web server of choice. So we can either build it locally or we could have published it. So I'm just going to build locally here and it's done. So let me open up our Star Wars knowledge base here and let's start clicking around. Let's start using it. Okay, so I'm clicking on some topics. Okay, let's do a search for tips, some stuff we know is in there. Let's do it a couple times. And maybe we'll search on something that's we know is not in there. I'm going to go ahead and search on geo because I know that I don't think we have any topics on geo in here. So geo returns 0 results. Let's do that a couple times. Okay, so just real quick, I wanted to show you how easy it is to start collecting data. So we've assigned our key, we've got our Central account, we published or we built our project. So if we pop back over to Central now, and I go ahead and I'll refresh, let me go to this Star Wars knowledge base that we're tracking, and we can see right away, it's already gathering that data. So this phrases, we have phrases with no results. So there's the geo I was searching on. These are the topic hits we looked at in the last couple seconds. We've got some browser statistics here. I'm going to wait for GoTo to catch up because there's a little bit of a lag. And also operating system statistics. Now, we didn't do much, okay? This was a knowledge base that I just clicked around just a couple of times, okay? But I have another output that I'm tracking. So let's take a look and talk about these reports in a little bit more detail. So I'm going to go back to analytics. I've got another knowledge base that I've published and have been tracking. And by the way, I want to mention, when you have Central, if you have an account, you can start tracking data and analytics on an unlimited number of projects and targets. So your single Central account will cover everything. So if you want to segment out, if you've created a lot of different targets for different customers or employee sites, and you want to track how these different audiences are using this output, you can do that. They're just individual keys that you track with your target. Or you can pool everything together. That's totally up to you. It's flexible enough. But let's take a look at this guy here. So this is a live site, and I've been hitting it for a little bit just to kind of show a little bit more data. Let's talk about this phrases for a moment. So again, these are the keyword searches your customers are using to search on content. And we're showing a little bit more here. So these are the queries people are using, the keyword terms, the number of times they're using that term. This is showing us the number of results that search query provided. So if you search on features in this particular knowledge base, you're going to get 3 results, at least based on the last search here. This is also telling us here whether micro content was returned as part of that result. I don't know if any of you, we released micro content earlier, and I'm not sure I don't know if any of you are using it now, but utilizing micro content in Flare which is something we released in Flare 2019, is a wonderful way to improve the search behavior of your content and improve the usability of your content for your end users. So micro content isn't anything we made up. You and I see it every day when we use Google, when we use Instagram. Micro content is text, images, and video, some short bit of information that answers somebody's query or question or idea in like 10 to 30 seconds. So if you've ever done a search in Google and maybe you search for, I don't know, healthy vegetable soup recipe or something like that, Google's going to give you about 100 million results that you could sift through. But oftentimes what you'll see now is a little box at the top of your search result page, maybe with the top 5 ingredients and a little picture or maybe a little animated GIF of somebody making the soup. That's micro content. So we see it every day. And we use micro content a lot in our Flare search now, so that when you search for things in Flare help and Flare's online help, you're going to see micro content results. You may get a lot of hits. Maybe you search for snippets, for example. In fact, I'll show you real quick. Why not? We're here. Let me pull up the help system and I'll show you a real world example. Like I covered this in the last webinar, but it doesn't hurt to cover it again. If I search on snippets here, I'll wait for it to catch up. There we go. Yes, we get 311 results. That's great. But see this box of information up here? This is micro content. So this answers our question really quickly. We can see exactly what a snippet is, why use a snippet. We've got little bits of information, and we have this animated GIF over here to show us what's happening. And when we use micro content in Flare, it's a series of phrases or questions that point to an answer. So for Flare, micro content is really the backbone for a lot of things we're going to see in the future. Out of the box right now, we're using it to provide these featured snippet search results. And when I say snippet, I don't mean like snippets in Flare, but like a snippet of information at the top of our search results page here. But we can start seeing micro content in use for a lot of applications, and I suspect that with Flare, we'll start seeing more out of the box capabilities. So we'll see micro content come into play in the world of augmented reality, virtual reality, chatbots, and AI, because again, these are just a series of phrases that point to an answer. So we're gonna see a lot of micro content in the future. Our out-of-the-box implementation right now is through the search results. So how does that play back to these reports that I'm talking about? Well, if we go back here, if you're going to start building out micro content, it's really helpful to understand the queries and the keywords that people are using to search and find your content. You can use this as a basis to start building those micro content files. So I'm looking at my data here. I'm seeing a lot of searches on features and procedures. I may create some micro content queries or phrases and direct users to a particular micro content answer that I can set up in my Flare micro content editor. So we have some great information on micro content. If you want to learn more, we can certainly send some more information on that. But using these phrases is a really good start to understand how to build out that micro content experience in your own Flare project so that you don't have to guess. Okay, phrases with no results. These are the search terms your users are typing into the search that are coming back with no topics found. This is the stuff that your users are looking for that they can't find. And so to me, this is the money report. This is the one that really has a lot of a return on your investment, because if we can reduce the number of searches that aren't producing any results, well, then we know we're deflecting those more expensive support calls coming in. And we know how to make our content better based on how people are using it every single day. So in my example, I've got a lot of unanswered queries on JavaScript here. Maybe I need to build out some content to support that need. Sometimes this is also a great report. Sometimes you may find that the content that users are searching on, it's not that it's missing, it's just how you thought about authoring it is very different than how your users are searching on it. So you may be documenting sofas, your users are searching on couches. They're not finding anything. So yes, you can create some synonym relationships in Flare. You've always been able to do that, but you kind of had to guess. This data is going to tell you, if you know that you've got a ton of documentation on sofas and everybody's searching on couches, well, in Flare, you can create a quick synonym relationship. Sofas equal couches. So no matter what people are searching on, they're going to find it. Topics. So these are the topics that people are looking at regularly. And so we can see the view counts. How many times was that topic hit? This is the stuff you probably want to keep up to date. It's important. Maybe you use this if you have a home page that you've designed in your Flare documentation and you want to have maybe a tile or a section that talks about popular topics. Maybe pop over to this metric and take a look, and you can update that information on your home page based on what's popular in your site. Context-sensitive help calls. If you're attaching your help to an application, this is giving you a good idea of where people are getting stuck and invoking the help from your application. Maybe you can extrapolate some information based on this, and based on the call count of that topic. Gosh, everybody's getting stuck in this area of the application. Do we have a UX problem? Do we have a training problem? Do we have a doc problem? So you get some really good insights here. And then finally, some browser and some operating system statistics. This is showing us the browsers that are actually hitting the documentation site or the knowledge base, whatever it is you're creating. And this can help you make some decisions about perhaps what browsers you support going forward. I've got a very small percentage of people using this old version of Edge. Do we really need to keep, testing on that? We don't have a lot of users there. Maybe we have everybody upgrade. Same thing with operating system. This is showing us the operating systems that people are on when they're hitting our sites. So again, maybe you didn't think that anybody was using a mobile phone or a tablet to hit your site. Well, if they are, it's going to show up here. Maybe you can make some decisions about creating some responsive layouts or using the new responsive content conditions based on your audience hitting it. So again, I think this is a great feature. If you're not, getting data and analytics on your output, it's kind of like you're driving with your eyes closed. This is so easy to do, and I really would encourage you all to test this. So to recap quickly, I just have to restate some of these things. Again, it's so easy. We get instant data with literally a couple clicks of a button. We don't have to configure server-side software. We don't have to provision anything. We don't have to work with IT. Did I mention it was easy? Again, we don't have to be bound to Central. All we need is a Central account. Targets can be published anywhere. We don't have to host them on Central. We can host them on our own public or private web servers. As long as your reader has an internet connection, Central's going to gather that data. So if you publish it on a lockdown server where people have to log in, that's fine. If you enable that data and your user has an internet connection, you're going to be able to collect the data on that session. We can gather analytics on an unlimited number of targets with our Central account. And again, it's really, really easy. So if you haven't already tested this with R2, 2019 R2 and Central, I would encourage you to do so. All right, the next thing I want to talk about is this feature that we call publishing directly to Central. So I mentioned in my slides about kind of what Central is. It can be used to easily stage and host content to your end users. So previously, prior to this release, to get Flare output on MadCap Central, you actually, again, our Flare project's going to be bound to Central, but we would want to log into Central and build that target there, check it out, and if we like it, we can set it to live. You also have the option of publishing output directly to Central from your Flare project. So Central becomes this automatic publishing destination for you in Flare. You still need to set your outputs to live on Central if you want to host them there, but this saves an extra building step in Central if you're using it as a private staging area. And so why would you do this? Like, why is this kind of cool? Well, it does give you a few perks, particularly if you're using Central. So for one, if you've set up batch targets in your Flare project, this is supported. Again, Central's going to act as an additional publishing destination for you. So if you've got a bunch of targets in your project, maybe some are going to Central, some are going elsewhere, those batch targets are supported when we go to Central. If you use pre and post build events in your Flare targets, those are supported. So in previous, if we were just building on Central, Central's going to see our project because we sync it there. But unfortunately, it's not going to see those pre and post build events. So if we are using pre and post build events in our targets, and we publish directly to Central from Flare, then those are going to be respected when we look at them in Central and we host content live in Central. Elasticsearch is supported. So again, if you want to use Elasticsearch in your outputs because it's really great and it offers additional search capabilities, that's supported when we publish directly to Central. If we just build and host on Central, unfortunately, Elasticsearch isn't supported there yet. But if we want to configure Elasticsearch in our Flare target and publish directly to Central from Flare, well, then that's supported as well. Okay, because hosting there is so easy, but if we want to also use that Elasticsearch, we can take advantage of this. If you have content stored in external resources that you automatically import when you build, like images or Word docs that you're linking to, well, then those actions are supported when you publish your targets directly to Central. Flare's going to go talk to those external resources, bring them in, and then publish them directly over to Central. Kind of another interesting use case, say you work as a team and you've got a snapshot of the project and maybe you want to do a quick publish of the current state of that project and put it on Central as a staging area for the team to see. And you don't want to necessarily merge all the changes in from everybody else. You just want to, you've been working on it locally, maybe you've made some skin changes or some style sheet changes, and you just want to do a quick publish of how things are looking so everybody can log into Central and see how it looks, your authoring team. Well, this is another way you can use that. You can just do a quick publish to Central based on the current state of your project and have everybody check it out. So that's another way you may want to use it. Okay, so let's talk about how it works. Let me go ahead and switch over to Flare. So I'm going to bring up a different project for this one. Okay, so again, I'm in my target file. And so I've got this is a slightly different project, not the Star Wars one, a little bit different. In the publishing tab, now I want to point out for this feature to work, unlike output analytics, as I said, we don't have to be bound to Central, we don't have to host on Central, we just need a Central account. For this feature, we do in fact have to bind our projects to Central. So we have to be connected on the project side to Central for this to work. And if you are bound to Central, when you open up your target editor and you come to the publishing tab, this Central destination is going to be an automatic publishing destination for you. So that will automatically be there. Now in my project, I've got 2 publishing destinations. So I could publish this target to both places if I want to. But Central, because I'm bound, this automatically showed up as a destination for me and I can publish my output there. And if we want to, we can choose either the MadCap search or because Elasticsearch is supported, we can choose that as well. Okay, so I'm publishing to Central. So I went ahead and I did this right before the webinar to save a minute because every minute counts right now. So once that's selected, all you have to do is click publish. And when you log into Central, which I'll do right now, so we're looking at our analytics. I'm going to go to my projects. So our projects page in Central represents a list of all the projects that I've copied or cloned up in Central. Well, that project in Flare was called Soledad. So let me go ahead and go in there and we'll check it out. And I'll wait for GoToWebinar to catch up. And we're going to go ahead and take a look at this guy. So this is my target. Okay, so I've synced, so it's seeing everything. And these represent the builds in Central. And what's nice about this publish to Central action is that now we've got this new column. Central tells us where did this build come from? Was it built on Central or did it come from Flare? So I built this one on the 4th. This I built in Central just by right-clicking on the target and clicking build. This one, however, I published to Central on October 5th. And we know because it's got that little Flare icon. Okay, so if I expand this here, I would be able to check it out. In fact, I can click on this live URL. I went ahead and set it to live simply by right-clicking, and I set it to live, and then I got my live URL. So if I click on this here, we can check it out. And so this is the site that I'm hosting on Central. It was all authored in Flare and published to Central right from my Flare target. It saved me a step. I didn't have to log into Central, build it, check it out. I could publish directly there from Flare. Okay, so moving along, let me do a quick time check. We've got a little bit of time left. The next thing I want to talk about is Confluence Import, support for Confluence files now. So kind of tagging on that import theme that Gio was talking about earlier, we've also added support for importing Confluence pages. So if you've got existing content in Confluence that you would like to easily repurpose, or maybe you've got some teammates that use it and you want to work with their content, well, now we can point to those spaces and bring in those Confluence files. Now you can start a brand new Flare project. In fact, while I'm talking about this, I'm going to pop back over to Flare and we can do this together here. So one thing you'll notice if I go to the File menu and I go to New Project, we can start a brand new Flare project based on a set of Confluence pages like we've been able to do with Word or Excel, for example. Or if you've got a project already brewing, you've already got one going. Oops, let me close this out and tidy this up here. Perhaps you want to bring those Confluence pages in to your existing project. So let's go ahead and do that. And we'll import. So that's what I'm going to do here. I've already got a project brewing. So I'm going to point to my Confluence space and I'm going to bring some pages in. And so that's done with the good old-fashioned project ribbon and import. So if you have 2019 R2 installed and you go to project, when you go to the import option, you'll see a new option there for importing Confluence pages. So before I do, I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder in my Content Explorer because I would like my Confluence pages that I'm going to bring in, I'd like to have them go into this folder here. So I'd like to keep things tidy. I'll put my new imports in there. Now, before I do the import, I'll just go ahead. I do have my Confluence space open, so we'll go ahead and take a look. Okay, so we've got some information here. We've got, oh, I forgot. The content that I'm bringing in from Confluence is actually all about a Jedi training camp. So I'm not going to bring it into that project that I have. I'm actually going to bring it into my Star Wars knowledge base here, which is this guy. So let me go here. I think I already have a folder created. I don't, but that's okay. We can go ahead and, well, let's use the other one. It doesn't matter really. So we've got my folder and let's go back and I want to show you some of these pages that we're going to bring in. So I've got, it's a small Confluence space. I've got three pages here that I'm bringing in. I've got this sort of page tree. So this content is all about my Jedi training camp policies and procedures that we're documenting since we're doing a Star Wars theme. These are the pages I want to bring into Flare. So from my existing project here, I'm going to go project import. I'm going to choose Confluence and we're going to start that import process. So we want to bring it into this project here and I'm going to tell this import I would like for it to go into this Confluence folder that I've designated. Here I'm going to log into that Confluence web server and I don't have it memorized, excuse me. Don't have it memorized, but I'm going to grab it. I have it on a sticky note over here so I didn't forget it. So my Confluence server is here. Now I want to point out that this works on the cloud version of Confluence and an on-prem version of Confluence. So no matter which one you have, you can do this. I'm going to put in my username. I've already done this once, so it remembers, and my password. So this is what I use to log into our on-prem version of Confluence. I'll go ahead and click Submit. And my workspace selection, excuse me, my workspace selection is now available to me here. I'll choose my space. So I've got my own space here called Demo Gen. And I'm going to go ahead and choose the pages that I want to bring in. On the advanced options, we can tell the import, do we want to bring in any linked pages? So if you've got a page in Confluence that maybe links to something else in another space, if we keep that checked, any of those linked pages will come in as well. We can make some choices about how the import handles some of the inline formatting and style classes that Confluence uses. Also, we can choose to import images. So I had a couple images in my pages, and I definitely want to bring those in. I'm going to import those into my resources folder, which is where my images go by default over here on the left. And another option we've got is this link generated files to source files. What does this mean? Well, let's say the pages that you want to bring in are being updated by somebody else on your team, and you're not going to be editing them or massaging them in Flare. They're kind of a living document in Confluence. You may choose to link to those files. What you're doing is you're turning off Flare as an editor for those files essentially, and you're just using Flare as a publishing engine for those pages that you're linking to. So if somebody else is owning that content, what you can do is you can re-import them and it'll bring in all of the changes that somebody else made in Confluence. Or if you uncheck this box, we're going to import those pages and then we're going to cut the cord and we'll continue to update that content in Flare going forward. So that's your choice. So I'll go ahead and click Finish. And I get a little preview just like we normally do when we do an import, and I'll click Accept. And if we open up our Confluence folder here, we'll take a look. So my Confluence pages are brought in. And what's nice is that Flare will actually take the name of the page and map it to an H1 in your topic, and all of those subheadings in Confluence come over as well, which I've done. My images come over, etc. Hyperlinks are supported as well. So here's a link that I created to another page that came in. So that bulleted list came over from Confluence. Here's the third one I did. I think this is Darth. Yeah, so here's a little overview. And of course, hyperlinks to external sources come over as well. So it's pretty slick. And again, if you have to work with folks that are using it, I think this will make it much easier. It did create an import file, and it created a table of contents. So if I go here, it did create a table of contents for me to preserve the tree structure. So that's your choice if you want to continue to use it, merge it into your existing TOC. But of course, that import folder was created so that if we have to go ahead and use those same settings and add additional pages to that import, we can use that import file to add additional pages that get added to our Confluence page, and then spaces, and then re-import them in the future. So pretty cool stuff. Okay, so let's move on, since we're running out of time here. I want to just cover quickly before we get to some questions, I see some coming in. I want to just cover some additional features that we didn't have time to demo in depth, but I want to make mention of them. First of all, we've made a ton of improvements to accessibility, HTML5 accessibility enhancements. So for those of you that have to be mindful of Section 508 or Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, so making your content accessible for those with certain disabilities or visual impairments, we've made a ton of improvements here. So this includes keyboard navigation improvements, so that experience has been improved for elements such as menus and logos and buttons. We have the ability now to skip to main content. So in previous versions, users working with the screen reader and HTML5 output would need to tab through so many navigation items before arriving at the main topic content. Well, with this version, your HTML5 outputs automatically include a skip to main content option when the users open the output and press tab. So after encountering that, they can press enter and bypass all of that navigation and skip directly to the main content. You can also use the UI text tab in the skin editor or language skin to change the text for several new elements related to accessibility, such as the logo tooltip and that skip to main content label if you want. So that's an option. We've made some Zendesk publishing enhancements. So for those of you who are taking your single source content and publishing it directly to Zendesk, we have the ability now to publish to brands in a subdomain. Previously, you were limited to just the default subdomain, but now those brands are supported as well if you're doing that. Oops, sorry about that, publish to brands. And then also some additional content options. So these are configurable when you're publishing to Zendesk. So now you can include what group of users on Zendesk are allowed to view published content, and some additional management permissions to control who can edit and publish content once it's in Zendesk. So again, these are going to be options available to you in the publishing destination in your Flare project. So we need to set up that Zendesk publishing destination to make the handoff. So you'll see these new options available to you if you're using that. And then lastly, if you've got any Frame 2019 files that you need to repurpose, Flare can now import Frame 2019 files as well. All right, we covered a lot. I'm looking at the time. We've got a few minutes. If anybody wants to hang on, please do. If you have any questions, keep typing them in. Before we get there, I want to make a quick announcement. So we are just coming off the heels of Mad World Europe. We were many of us were in Dublin last week for an amazing conference. I'm seeing some familiar names on the list. So it was so great to see everybody there. It was a wonderful success. We all learned a lot. We all had a chance to share. But we also announced, of course, that we have Mad World in Austin, Texas next year, September 20th through the 23rd at the Fairmont. More details are coming soon. Start looking for some correspondence from us before the end of the year. We're going to have some pretty steep early registration discounts probably before the end of the year, so look for information on that. So we're really excited to announce this conference next September. All right, we're just at the end of our time here, but we do have some time for a few questions, so I'm just going to pull them up. If you've got any, we probably won't be able to get to all of them, but we want to get to as many as we can here. And I see some are being entered, but let me go back up to the top. So there was a really good question that came in that I wanted to kind of clarify. The question was, I don't see any responsive content in my conditional text folder. Does it need to be manually added? I've already upgraded to 2019 R2. And I thought that was a good question. I saw it a couple times, but I just wanted to reiterate what Gio was talking about. So when we create these responsive content conditions, these are just going to be like regular conditional tag sets in your project. So if you want to start using them, you will need to create an additional conditional tag set. And as Gio mentioned, it's a good idea to keep them separate from your regular conditional tags. It just makes it a little bit easier. It keeps things a little bit tidy, particularly when you're assigning those conditions in your target. So they're not in the project, but you can add them as just another conditional tag set. And you're going to probably just want to keep the condition tags as mobile, tablet, and web. So I thought that was a good question. I thought this was a really good question. Maybe Gio, you want to tackle this one. I know you pointed this out. The question came up, can you drag and drop from one project to another?
Yes, you can drag and drop files from one project to another, whether that be topic files or any resource files that will come in.
Yeah, I know that was one of your favorites, so I wanted to make sure you.
Great question.
Yeah. Let's see, I'm just looking at one that a lot of people asked here. So another question, as you were talking about the Word import, I thought this was a good one. So how does Microsoft Word import headers and footers in the Word doc? Well, those actually come in. You can choose to include them in a master page or a page layout that's created upon import. So we can preserve them if we want, and then of course we can edit them going forward in Flare. Oh, that was a good question. So another good question, if a Word document contains bold text mid-sentence using a style specific to the document, will the import preserve the bold text? So yes, you can keep that inline formatting in Word if you want to upon import. So you won't lose that inline bold formatting if you don't want to. Okay, another good question here. I think we've got, if you guys want to hang on for a couple more minutes, I don't think we're going to be able to get to all of these, but these are some fantastic questions. And as I mentioned, we're going to be sending out a question and answer document to everybody. So I'm looking for ones that a few people asked, so I'm going to tackle those. So here's one. On Word import, if you don't choose to create a new style sheet, are the word styles added to the project CSS file or just added to the end of the imported topics? So we actually showed this, we're a little bit quick, but the answer is that the word styles are going to be added to the project CSS file if you decided to not create a brand new style sheet upon import. So we don't create a new style sheet, we'll take those styles and append it to the end of the master style sheet in your project. Okay, so just a couple more here, I think. Okay, I thought this was a good one too. I see that there's Pulse Feedback Server Provider option. Does this mean that one could do this with their own server setup versus having to either have Pulse or Central? Using analytics with Central essentially replaces the need to configure additional servers to run Pulse. Pulse did offer this feedback mechanism where if you enabled it, this sort of proactive feedback thing showed up at the bottom of your topics where it allowed readers to log in and post questions and update their statuses. One thing we found is a lot of folks were using Pulse for the data and they weren't so much using it for that proactive feedback layer. It was a little tricky because we couldn't really style and configure the way that looked. You got what you got kind of thing. So some people turned that off and they were using their own third-party widgets for feedback. And so with Central now, we don't even have to go through any kind of server provisioning and install any kind of server-side software to get those analytics happening. All we need is a Central account. We can enable Central in our target as we showed. We can log in and we can start tracking data right away. If we want to invite users to give us that proactive feedback. I've seen lots of examples, and we've got some cool examples on our customer showcase too. Some other companies will choose to drop in third-party widgets into their master pages, like a feedback widget, or sometimes they write it themselves. You can find them on the web. Some are free, some are paid, and oftentimes they provide a lot of flexibility on how they're styled and configured. You know, maybe it's something like a, hey, was this helpful? Yes or no, thumbs up, thumb down. If you click thumb down, maybe the widget provides a little text box and a place for you to put in your feedback, or, you know, your email address optionally. So they're all a little different, but they're so highly configurable and they're easy to use, and it's way more flexible to use something like that in your master page. Then you've got all this great data collection handling behind the scenes, which doesn't take any time to set up. Okay, so I'm looking, let's see here. So the question was, if I publish my project to Central, is there a charge per user? So, you know, this is a good question. So, and I hope I'm reading this correctly. When we publish to Central, and we're using Central to host our content live to our end users, like we're setting it live and making it a searchable, usable URL, we don't actually charge based on the number of customers that hit that site. So you can have a gazillion eyeballs searching and using your knowledge base that's hosted on Central. We don't charge that. We don't have the eyeball charge, I guess. Central is licensed based on the users that can log into Central to actually use it. So the Flare users that need to log into Central to, you know, get analytics or use it for source control or reviews. So the Central is licensed based on the users who actually log into Central to use it, not so much the viewers of your output hosted on Central. So I hope I read that question right. If I didn't, please let me know. So hopefully that helps. So great question here. Do analytics work if you do not use Central for hosting? Yes, and it's a good question, and I'll stress it again. And that's one of the things that makes this feature so flexible. You can host your output anywhere, even on a private web server if you want. You don't even have to bind your project to Central. All you need is that Central account. So when you enable Central as your analytic option and your target, you're going to log into your Central account and then create a key. You don't have to be bound. You don't have to publish there. You don't have to host there. All you need is that Central account. You just have to be able to log in. So I think we have time for one more. I love these questions. They're so good. Oh, wonderful question. How does one get a MadCap Central account? Well, the best place to start, and I should have mentioned this, so thank you for asking this question. So Central, since it's a cloud-based platform, you can try it completely in your environment free for 30 days, including this analytics, without binding or doing anything. And the way you do it is you go to our website, you can go to the Central products page. We have buttons to try our software in many, many places on our website. But if you go to our madcapsoftware.com and you click on the Central page, you'll see front and center, there's going to be a, you know, try it for 30-day button. So just fill out the form. You're going to get an email right away with a link in there that says, well, the email will say something to the effect of, thanks for trying out Central. Click here to create your secure password. And that's all you need to do. You'll click the link, you'll create your password, and you'll automatically be logged into your secure license of Central. And that's all you need to do to enable those analytics in your target. So once you've got your account from Flare in your target file, you're going to want to log into that Central account with the same credentials you used when you created the trial, and you can start tracking those analytics. And feel free to reach out to us if you all are testing this and tinkering, and if you have any questions, Gio and I would be happy to help you directly, or anybody on our tech support team. So I'm looking at the time, we're a little bit over. I really hope this was helpful for everybody. It was really fun to go through all these new features. We're really excited about them. I hope that some of these are features you all can start using right away. And if you have any questions while you're tinkering or testing, please feel free to reach out to us directly. Don't forget tech support's there for you as well. And if so many great questions coming in, this is going to stay open for about a minute longer. So if you have any last minute questions, jot them down. Like I said, we're going to compile everything and get it out to everybody. So with that, I just want to thank you all again for joining. I hope you found this useful. It was great to connect with you all and show these features to you. And we'd love to get your feedback on how you're using them. So thanks, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the week, and we'll see you on the next webinar.